The voyage of the Argo is incredible, full of adventures, and also it has Medea, so that's immediately a plus. Written by Apollonius of Rhodes, who wasn't actually from Rhodes, and a beloved epic ever since. The only piece of information beforehand you need is the story of Phrixus and Hels, his sister, who, thanks to Hermes, escaped sacrifice and flew away on a golden ram. Hels unfortunately died at the Hellespont, named after her ever since. But Phrixus flew to Colchis. There the sheep was sacrificed, and the fleece has been given to King Aeetes in exchange for the hand of his daughter Chalciope. It has been there ever since. Okay, quick myth over, let's go on a journey. The Voyage of Argo by Apollonius of Rhodes, Book 1. It was King Pelias that sent him out. Thanks to the oracle, he was scared of a man who was said to bring him death. Man who comes to him with 1 foot bare. And here we meet Jason, who, unfortunately, walked to Pelias exactly like that, losing one of his sandals in the mud. And so Pelias, instead of straight up killing him, decided to send him on a grand adventure, hoping that he would never be seen again. A ship was built by Argos with the help of Athena herself. Here is some of the crew that will be important. There is many more that are not that prominent, but they are cool and may show up. Theseus was stuck in the underworld, and Apollonius sadly said no to Atalanta. All of these heroes are going on a quest with a single goal: retrieve the golden fleece from King Aeetes of Colchis and bring it back to Hellas. Jason said goodbye to his mother and went to the beach where he addressed his crew. They needed to choose their leader out of all of them. All naturally turned to Heracles, but as a true bro that Heracles is, he turned to Jason. He assembled them, he should be their leader. They took Argo to the sea and prepared a sacrifice to Apollo. Trust me, this is one of many, but in this one Idmon, our local prophet, is like, Jason, you will come back home with the fleece, Apollo is happy with you, but I will die. But I'm coming anyway, it's gonna be epic. Like the written epic, get it? They chose their benches on the ship, and at dawn they sailed with all the gods watching them. Even Chiron with baby Achilles in his arms watched his father sail away. Leaving Pelion, they traveled past many places, stopping on shore during some nights, until they made their way to the island of Lemnos. There, the previous year, the women of the island slaughtered every male inhabitant, and every girl their husbands brought into exchange for their boring wives. Only Hypsipyle spared her father, the king of the island, Thoas, hiding him in a chest and drifting him out to the sea. These women lived in fear of the Thracians, and when they saw Argo approach, they were terrified that the Thracians finally came for them. They suited up, ready to attack. But Aethalides traveled there first alone, asking for permission for Argo to dock, which they got. I guess it's the charm of the son of the trickster god. Anyway, the women of the island called on a meeting. The Argonauts could stay on the beach, but if they let them into the city, they would realize what they did to their husbands. That's not good. But the elder of the women, Polyxo, thought otherwise. She was like, yes, but also we may need kids to continue this life on this island. Let's invite them over to just mingle a bit, you know what I mean. The women agreed and Jason was invited as the rest of the crew. Jason entered the palace of Hypsipyle, where she told him of what has happened to the men. Oh, the tragedy! They migrated to Thrace! After all, they only cared about the girls they brought from that place anyway, and not their actual wives. So the wives closed the gates behind them and sent them to Thrace forever. No murder happened here, no sir. Hypsipyle basically offered Jason to stay with her and the other Argonauts too, and settle in the city. Jason declined this and only asked for provisions. Really flattered, but they ought to continue on their journey. That didn't stop them from having a fun night though with the women. And actually they all got a little bit into it, Jason too. Only Heracles stayed by the ship, and after a few days he was like, alright gang, we have to go, otherwise the only thing Jason is gonna be known for is repopulating Lemnos and not getting the golden fleece. And so they said their goodbyes with empty promises mixed in and departed. They stopped by many more places on their voyage until they passed the Hellespont. After some time they landed in the land of the Doliones with their young king Cyzicus, who kindly received the Argonauts with dinner and stories to tell. But oh no! There were monsters in this land, furious men with 6 arms, who threatened to block the harbor by throwing giant rocks at it. Heracles waited for nothing and started shooting the monsters down with his bow, and quickly after that the other Argonauts joined him and killed them all. Argonauts sailed away from there, but thanks to the unfriendly winds they landed on the same island during the night, not realizing it's the same place. Unfortunately, neither did the Doliones recognize their earlier guests. They thought the ship was attacking them, and so they attacked first. Cyzicus, the king himself, was killed by Jason, and he wasn't the only one. In the morning, they all realized the error they just made, and the mourning for the king and the men began. For 12 days it stormed, and they couldn't leave afterwards anyway. The Argonauts had to sacrifice to Rhea on Mount Dindymum or no adventure. Gods were just like that sometimes. When they did that, Rhea was satisfied and they departed on safe waters. On the way, Heracles broke his oar though, and he needed a new one. They landed for the night, and he tore out a pine to make it into a new oar. Hylas, his helper, went to fetch water for him, but went to the spring just as the nymphs were around. One of the nymphs was overcome by desire for the boy and took him under the water. Only one cry could be heard, alerting Polyphemus, one of the Argonauts, who fetched Heracles. But there was no saving Hylas. Heracles was so upset that he ran away, and in the morning the Argonauts first sailed on without them. But the rest of the crew was like, no way we can survive without Heracles, and as they were preparing to turn the Argo around, Glaucus, messenger of the sea god Nereus, appeared. Heracles won't sail to Colchis, and Hylas has been wedded to the nymph. No arguments allowed. And so Argo sailed on with them gone. As they continued their journey, they soon landed on a white beach in the land of King Amycus. Book 2. Unfortunately for the Argonauts, King Amycus liked to throw hands. Every foreigner who arrived to his lands was promptly invited to a fistfight, and the Argonauts were no different. Polydeuces answered this challenge, and others sat around them, forming a circle. It was beautiful Polydeuces against giant Amycus. Fight. Amycus attacked first, Polydeuces dodging, judging his enemy, and then swiftly attacking back. Amycus wanted to win by sheer size alone, but Polydeuces was fast, slipped by him, and punched him right behind the ear, instantly killing the king. Amycus's kingsmen were a bit fussy at first, but ended up running away from the Argonauts. After a good night and replenishing their stock, they went on to sail once more. Another stop on their trip was a place belonging to old Phineus, son of Agenor. Now Phineus was given a gift of prophecy by Apollo, but he didn't respect the gods' messages. Thanks to that, Zeus took away Phineus's scythe. He lived and aged still, but barely holding on. Anytime he wanted to eat, Harpies appeared and stole all of his food, and the one they left smelled so foul that nobody would eat it. Don't disrespect the gods. When the Argonauts arrived, Phineus went on to greet them with a prophecy. They were here to save him. The sons of the North Wind will be able to chase away the Harpies, so that Phineus will be able to enjoy his food once more. Zetes and Calais agreed to help. A meal for Phineus was prepared, and the twins stood at the ready. When the Harpies showed up, Zetes and Calais gave chase until they drove them so far away they would not come back. Battle was won, no blood spill. Phineus ate like crazy, and in between the bites he told Argonauts about the prophecy for the rest of their journey. He basically spoils the plot, so let me just say that Phineus told the Argonauts about the clashing rocks that lay ahead and how to get through them safely. The journey will be perilous, full of enemies, strangers, and even stranger lands. And a god may show up here and there, just for fun. Also, the fleece itself was apparently guarded by a giant unblinking serpent that lets nobody near it. Good luck with that. They sacrificed to Apollo and other gods, fetched a dove, as Phineus instructed, and they were off to the clashing rocks, Athena following them. The sea by the clashing rocks was dangerous, with waves and rocks spilling everywhere, but the Argonauts continued on, and once they actually saw the rocks moving, they let out the dove they caught. If the dove returned, they could pass. If it didn't, well, it was a game over. The dove flew back, and as soon as the rocks opened again, the Argo went in. Our heroes could see the sea both in front and behind them when the waves and rocks swept in. Argo did escape the clashing rocks, but for every meter she moved forward, she was pulled back by 2. The ship was trapped in place, and at that moment, Athena intervened. She helped Argo pass through, holding the rocks and shooting the ship forward like an arrow. The Argonauts were safe, but Jason was a bit anxious after this whole ordeal. The rest of the crew reassured him they were in this together. They rowed for the rest of the day afterwards, passing places Phineus had told them about. At last they stopped at the Isle of Tinius, where they all encountered a vision of Apollo on his way to Lycia, moving above the sea. They built an altar right here and there and sailed on. At Acherusian Cape, Lycus, the local chieftain, welcomed them. After he heard the story of the quest they were on, he offered his son, Dascylus, to join them, because why not? As they gathered at the beach, Idmon got attacked. A giant boar rammed him and cut open his thigh. The Argonauts managed to kill the boar, but there was no helping Idmon. He died in the arms of his friends, just as his own prophecy foretold. They mourned him, feeling like they didn't know how to continue. But Hera gave them enough courage to hang on tight. Back on Argo, they passed by the tomb of Snelius, a companion of Heracles. His ghost wished to see the man of his own kind one last time, and Persephone granted him the wish, just for a little while. So when Argo sailed past, they all saw the ghost of Snelius staring at them, and then disappearing, satisfied with his wish. On their way, some new faces joined them, previous companion of Heracles, and they passed some strange lands, like the lands of the Amazons, the Callybes, Tibareni, and Mossynoeci. As they were approaching the Isle of Ares, they got attacked by birds. There were thousands of them, too many to kill with bows. But the Argonauts quickly made a plan. Let's confuse the birds with their crested helmets on their heads and their spears and shields. They should shout at once to shockwave the birds out, and afterwards, just bang their spears on their shields as they land on the island. Surprisingly enough, this worked. The birds flew away and the Argonauts landed, just as was said in Phineus's prophecy. But what to even do here? Just as Zeus has planned, the sons of Phrixus, the man who brought the golden ram to Colchis, were stranded on the same island. Argus, Phrontis, Cytisorus, and Melas were traveling to Hellas to take possession of their grandpa's estate. That trip didn't quite work out though, and they were invited to join the Argonauts by Jason himself. They didn't really want to in the beginning, because they knew how King Aeetes is and that he just won't let the Argonauts take the fleece easily, but they got persuaded by Peleus. On their journey, where Argus led them back to Colchis, they saw the rock where Prometheus was bound and even observed the eagle flying in. At last they arrived to their destination, landing in a moor, hidden and waiting for dawn. Book 3. The group could have been ambushed, but luckily and unbeknownst to them, 2 goddesses, Hera and Athena, saw it. They had a talk and settled on a plan. Eros was to fire one of his arrows at Medea, the daughter of King Aeetes, so that she falls in love with Jason and helps him recover the golden fleece. She was powerful, she will help. They agree on this, and the plan is ready. Back with the Argonauts, Jason is suggesting going to Aeetes' palace with the sons of Phrixus and Telamon first, to see whether the king will treat them as friends or foes. It would be useless to attack first without trying to talk it out. With the wand of Hermes in hand, they went. They passed through trees where the dead hung from their branches wrapped in ox hides, as Colchians didn't bury their dead in the ground. They entered a palace which was equipped with marvels made by Hephaestus, like springs of milk and oil, bowls of bronze that breathed fire, and to top it all off, a plow of steel. Medea was first to notice the strangers in the palace. everyone started working, preparing sacrifices, baths, food, and in the chaos of it all, Eros shot his arrow at Medea and she couldn't keep her eyes off Jason. Questions were asked, especially to the sons of Phrixus, as they returned home quite sooner than expected. Argus talked with King Aeetes and told him everything about Jason and his quest for the Golden Fleece. Now, King Aeetes did not like that. As soon as Argus finished talking, he burst out in a fury. "Get out of my sight," he cried. "I wish I killed you before I gave you food. Leave and don't come back." Telamon wanted to throw hands, but Jason stopped him and spoke. They didn't come to seize his throne or anything. They were willing to pay in service for the Golden Fleece. King Aeetes wasn't convinced though at all and wished to kill them on the spot. But what if he tests them first, just to put their power to proof? As I mentioned the marvels of Hephaestus, Aeetes has a pair of fire-breathing bulls. With them he plows the field and sows teeth of a monstrous serpent which grow into soldiers who he after that kills. Just an everyday hobby for an old man. If Jason can do the same, then he will give him the fleece. And Jason had no other option than to agree to this test. He's doing all of this for a request of a foreign king. Ridiculous. They left the palace, only Argus from the sons of Phrixus joining them. Other sons stayed at the palace. As Jason passed Medea, her heart yearned for him. Medea prayed to Hecate. The man was walking to his death. Save him. As they got further from the city, Argus suggested to get help of a certain witch of Hecate. If Jason agrees, which he immediately did, I don't think anybody is beating fire-breathing bulls without help. They reached the Argo and Jason told everybody of his task. Peleus, Telamon, and others immediately offered themselves for the challenge, but thanks to a divine sign, they knew that they should use help of magic. They rowed the Argo out to the dry land, not hiding anymore. In the meantime, Aeetes gathered his Colchians and told them to burn the ship down, as soon as the bulls killed the man who tried to tame them. Argus sneaked into the palace to beg his mom to persuade Medea to help them. Lucky for them, Medea herself wanted to help the lovely stranger after having some strange dreams herself. She wept as she didn't know what to do until her sister Chalciope heard it and came to her aid. They both wanted the same thing for different reasons. Chalciope wanted to save her sons, and Medea wanted to save her handsome, doomed stranger. At last she promised to help her sister, but remained conflicted herself. Will she help the stranger and give him the charm to tame the bulls? Will she go against the wishes of her father? How does she help him without being found out? At dawn, Medea had a carriage prepared to take her to a temple of Hecate, and from her box of herbs she took one named after Prometheus, created by his blood. If smeared on the body, its user will be invulnerable by sword or fire, and they will gain an incredible strength. Medea drove to the place as she was supposed to meet with Jason, as Argus instructed him, hearing it from his mum. I know, it's a bit convoluted. Jason was on his way, all perked up and handsome thanks to Hera's help. Soon they were alone in the temple, too close to each other. Jason pleaded for help from Medea, to which she just smiled and gave him the charm. She enjoyed that he needed her so much, how he talked to her. They were both a little flustered, but Medea picked herself up and told Jason about her plan. When Aeetes gave Jason the teeth, he should wait until midnight and bathe in an ever-running river. After that, sacrifice a sheep to Hecate in a pit, and after that he should go forward and not look behind him. In the morning he should melt the charm and use it as an ointment for his body. It will feel great, but beware, it's only up for a day. After all that's done and he has sown the teeth and the giants start to spring up, he needs to throw a boulder in the middle of them. They will start attacking it, and then they can be killed off easily. After that, he can get the golden fleece, and wish whoosh, Jason would be on his way home. Medea couldn't hold her tears imagining Jason sailing off, and Jason seeing her like that realized that he may also have a thing for her. She asked him to just remember her name when they sail back. He would never forget her. He wanted to take her to Hellas with him, to take her to his home. But for now, they had to part ways. The night passed, and in the morning, the serpent teeth were fetched by 2 of the Argonauts from King Aeetes himself. In the evening, Jason sneaked off to follow Medea's guidance and activate the charm. It was done. By dawn, King Aeetes, all dressed up, drove to witness the contest. The charm from Medea worked perfectly, and the Argo rode to the plain of Ares, where the test would take place. Aeetes was already waiting there. There stood the bronze yoke for the bulls, as well as the steel plough. From earth itself the bulls appeared, breathing fire. Jason quickly protected himself with a shield and survived thanks to Medea's magic. Slowly but surely, Jason held and bent down both bulls, holding them by the horns, his shield down. Castor and Polydeuces passed Jason the yoke, which he bound to the bulls, and with his spears he picked up. He pricked the bulls, his hand staying on the steel plough. Jason worked the bulls, sewing the teeth at a safe distance from himself. Once done, the bulls were freed and chewed off, like normal animals. Not even a minute later after that, the earth-born warriors from Teeth shot up from the ground. But, just as instructed, Jason picked up a giant boulder and threw it in the middle, he himself hiding behind a shield. The men started slaying themselves near the boulder, confused. Jason then waited for nothing, jumped into the hurdle and started slashing with his sword, killing all. The task was done just as the sun sank beneath the horizon and the bitter King Aeetes returned to his city. Book 4. Aeetes was furious and planning on how to punish the Argonauts and his daughter. Medea knew that her dad is not that dumb and figured out it was her who helped Jason. She decided that the best course of action is to flee together with the sons of Phrixus to Jason. She left a lock of her hair on the bed for her mom and ran off the palace hidden, going towards the temple while being watched by the moon goddess for protection. From there, Medea saw the fire of the Argonauts and called out to them. They waited for nothing and rode to fetch her. Jason leapt off the ship and at once, Medea, down on her knees, made her appeal towards him. They have been discovered in their treachery and they have to run away now. Medea herself will put the snake guarding the fleece to sleep so they can achieve their goal. So easy, just under one circumstance. Jason has to promise in front of the gods what he promised before when it was just 2 of them. And he has to promise now. Jason takes Medea's hand and promises to marry her once they get back to Hellas. After that, they embrace. At once they took Argo and rode her to the sacred wood. They landed where Phrixus sacrificed the golden ram to Zeus all those years ago. On the path to the oak where the fleeces hung, the Argonauts encountered the unblinking snake, hissing and staring straight at them. As the snake coiled, he noticed a woman invoking sleep to charm him. Unwittingly, the snake was falling asleep and Medea, thanks to her herbs, finally succeeded and the serpent fully lay down in slumber. Medea called out to Jason, who snatched the golden fleece while she made sure the snake stays asleep. While Jason had it, they ran off the grove together. Holding the fleece, they reunited with the rest of the Argonauts, and Jason, while he was at it, told everyone of what Medea just did and that she's gonna sail with them from now on. And they had to sail home fast, because Aeetes wanted them dead. The Colchians stood ready on the riverside, but Argo was too fast, already slipping into the sea. King Aeetes sent his men after it. He knew what Medea did, and he will have his revenge. Argo had good winds, thanks to Hera, and they sailed home to Hellas. Only that thanks to Phineus and his prophecy, they knew that they had to take a different route. But which one was the correct one? Argus proposed a route by the river Ishtar, and thanks to a divine sign from Hera, it was decided. The Colchians in the meantime were gaining on them, taking a faster route on a different shoulder of the same river. By the exit branch of the waters, they barricaded it and waited for the Argonauts to show up. The Argonauts, instead of falling for an obvious trap, decided to take refuge at the Isle of Artemis. They talked to the Colchians and agreed that they actually deserved to take the golden fleece to Hellas, fair and square. But Medea, she was to be left on the island until the kings decided if she was to go home or to go with the Argonauts. Medea obviously didn't like any of this and talked straight to Jason. On the first obstacle, all of his promises to her have failed. Did he not remember what she did for him after all of this? Medea was fuming. She wanted to burn the ship down and Jason had to calm her down, he himself being a little scared of her. He tried to give a speech about how there is no other way, but that didn't work on her. Medea had a plan. A trap for Absyrtus, a Colchian general. They laid out gifts for him and he was to meet Medea in the temple of Artemis, where she apparently waited with a golden fleece that she stole from the Argonauts. She apparently wanted to return to her father and seek forgiveness. Medea and Absyrtus, who was her brother by the way, talked and at once Jason ambushed them as planned and killed Absyrtus right there in the temple. After the corpse was buried, they met with the rest of the Argonauts and planned their next move. They rowed into the opposite shoulder of the river and waited on the Isle of Ember for the Colchians to fall into disarray after the death of their captain, Hera just adding some drama with a huge thunderstorm. Colchians didn't know if to pursue the Argonauts or to return, and decided to disperse the army after all of this confusion. But oh no, the gods want to talk. The murder of Absyrtus was apparently so brutal that Zeus himself ordered the Argonauts to wipe off the guilt with the help of Circe. I mean, they're gonna suffer on their way home regardless, but this should help at least a little bit. Hera wanted to help the Argonauts out and tell them where to go because they knew none of the godly moods, and so she made Argo herself talk, so the ship told them why Zeus is angry and what to do. They reached the lake where Phaethon fell from the sun chariot, and you could still see and smell his smoldering body. As you can imagine, they left that spot pretty quickly and continued their journey through the land of Celts. At last they passed back into the sea and landed on the island of Aea, home of Circe. Only Jason and Medea entered her house, cautious. Circe immediately noticed that they came to her house with a murder on their hands. Without saying anything, the witch set out to prepare the necessary rites. After those were done, she set them down and asked all the questions. She noticed Medea's eyes though, and at once they knew that they were related. Medea told her aunt what she did, and they were basically thrown out of Circe's house afterwards. Medea did this to herself, and she won't escape her father for long. Hera, seeing all of this happening, called upon Tethys and other gods to ensure that Argo has the safest route home. Tethys was to make sure that Argo travels safely through Scylla and Charybdis on their way out of Circe's island. Tethys did exactly that, telling Peleus, her husband on the ship, on how to pass the treacherous water safely. They sailed. They almost got charmed by the sirens, if it wasn't for Orpheus, who basically said, "No you," and overplayed them on his lyre. When the Argonauts were nearing the cliffs of Scylla and Charybdis, Tethys took to steering Argo, and the rest of the Nereids helped it pass the rocks on giant waves. At once they traveled onward until they landed on an island of King Alcinous. Their rest was cut short though, as Colchians who followed them there appeared, ready to throw hands yet again. And again, Medea had to beg to not let them take her to her father, to not forget what she did for them. King Alcinous consulted his queen, Arete, and agreed that he will only give Medea to her father if she is unmarried and untouched, if you know what I mean, which she was. But the queen quickly and quietly sent a herald to Jason. They were to marry tonight. And so Jason and Medea got married and laid together on a bed prepared by nymphs. In the morning, Alcinous lived up to his word and he denied giving Medea to the Colchians. He wasn't scared of them, but the Colchians may have been a little bit scared of him, as they offered friendship instead, giving up King Aeetes' pursuit. After that, the Argonauts and the newly wedded couple left the island. They almost saw the land of Pelops when a string gulf took them all the way to Libya. Argo got swept up on an inner shore of sand, now being proper stuck with nothing inside. The Argonauts turned miserable with no idea how to get out of this other than to wrap themselves in their cloaks and wait for death. Luckily, the nymphs of Libya saw them and felt sorry enough to give them a prophecy on how to get home. There was a horse coming out of the sea also, apparently, but he didn't stay. Peleus didn't need much more else to figure out the prophecy though. They were to carry Argo on their own shoulders, following the tracks of the horse. And so they did it. Don't ask me how. Apollonius didn't know either, he instead blamed the muses for this. The Argonauts finally managed to take Argo to the shore and found drinkable water thanks to the Hesperides. They were in a mood because just a day prior they got their apples stolen by some dude, like, can you imagine? But the Argonauts, they seemed trustworthy enough. After a few unfortunate events and still no sight of getting out of Libya, the Argonauts sacrificed a tripod in hopes of appeasing some gods to help them sail, Triton taking up the offer, pushing them straight into the open seas. They rowed and sailed straight to Crete, but oh no. When they wanted to land, they got scared away by the giant Talos, who was throwing rocks at them, protecting the island. Medea had to step up again, girl boss. She got on her deck and started her incantations in which she called down to Hades to show death to Talos in his mind. The power of Medea's magic forced Talos down, where he got hurt by the surrounding rocks and died. They docked in Crete that night and continued after, in which a night of no moon and no stars came. But luckily, Apollo was there to listen to Jason's prayers, using the arrows on his bow as a sort of a lighthouse to help the Argonauts dock safely. After that, on their travels, Euphemus, one of the Argonauts, grows an island out of a piece of Libyan soil. You know, to have a place to live. And at last, after all these incredible adventures, they landed home in Pagasae. The end. This is where Apollonius Argonautica ends. It genuinely just tells the story of the Argonauts and their journey. Want more Medea? Want to know what happens next? Let me know. And as always, please like and subscribe. This took forever. I'm even gonna be cheeky and advertise my coffee here, just in case you wanted to support my work a little bit. I'll see you next time. Don't forget to sacrifice to the gods, and bye bye.